universities that have been around for a long time. These are large urban communities, lots of people, highly diverse economies, and we're just talking about intensive changes in university activity. That's a lot different from saying, okay, let's set up a whole new university, create all this knowledge, to what extent, and then they're going to start to spill, this university is going to spill knowledge, to what extent will firms now try to co-locate near them to absorb those benefits. Now that's something that remains to be seen in Merced, but Alex and I are going to be doing some historical work trying to understand that particular question. So I don't have much to say on that right now, but that's kind of part of our overarching research program. Okay, so I think I did well.
Question?
How long has Merced been in, the university been in Merced? How long has it been there now?
So we started with students in 2005, and so yeah, 7 years.
I was just curious. Obviously, there are labor market statistics on employment levels there. I was wondering if you were looking at those to see whether or not you saw any change. But then again, then the recession hit, so I guess that would be a
Yeah, it's it's.
Or are you seeing any
knows,
kind
yeah.
of commute patterns extending from Merced at all? You know, from maybe the graduates from Merced, you know, still staying around the local area, but you know, not quite staying in Merced, maybe.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there's a couple research areas got seeded really early on at Merced, and I think it's probably more random than anything else. One of them is solar research, and so Roland Winston, he came from the University of Chicago, very prominent guy in this area, and so he's been around long enough now to have a good number of graduate students who finished his program. And so there's 3 of them who are staying in Merced trying to build this company using this particular technology that they developed in his lab. So now, you know, the question I have, you know, I've talked to them, they're very excited, and they want to do the right thing for the local community, and you know, they have grand ambitions. But what I'm wondering, as I kind of watch this going forward, is that are they going to be able to attract the local talent to accomplish what they want to accomplish? You know, more importantly, are they going to be able to get the venture capital fund dollars to create what they want to create? Because that's another big benefit of these agglomeration economies, let's say in the Silicon Valley, is that the researchers are there, the developers are there, the money is there, and they're all talking to each other, they all know each other. But if you're out in the periphery, in the Central Valley, you know, it's going to be a lot harder to do business. So if I had to predict, I think the benefits of the agglomeration economies that economists have kind of been documenting for, you know, about a decade now, if I were to think about it, just kind of like my first cut analysis, I see those graduate students ultimately moving their business to the Silicon Valley. Yes, sir.
Was Merced in your data set?
No, because
okay, because it was too rural.
Yeah, so it didn't exist then, but also we're only looking at counties with 250,000 people or bigger. So we miss a lot of important universities, like Duke University's not in there.
Well, I was wondering, because if you're excluding that segment of the population, one of the things I was wondering is that if the industry were space intensive, required land,
Yeah.
or and ease of building, whatever,
Right.
Versus population density, which would inhibit that.
Right.
You're constrained by freedom to build things or test.
Right.
So that's a different paradigm, I guess.
No, that's a good point. Like in some like civil engineering is really expensive. They need a lot of space because they're talking about civil projects. So it could very well be that those could be more successful in a more rural area, and so we're missing that. We do have a hope to kind of push this to look at more universities, including more rural universities, and kind of get a different understanding of how what universities do impact more rural versus the urban sector that we've looked at here. The big problem we face is kind of the data that we're using for this particular project, the county business patterns, which, as I said, mask a lot of industries in rural areas because you just don't have a lot of employers there. So we need to come up with another better data set that will enable us to look at the rural sector.
Right, did some of your counties include more than one research college? And did you find that the concentration of the number of universities in that county was different than maybe a county that only had one research university?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we aggregated up all the universities in a county and we treat them as one university. But you're exactly right, that's not the case. There could even be productivity spillovers and agglomeration in having multiple universities in a county that we're missing. And so that's a good idea. We should look at that. Thanks.
I missed the first 5 minutes or so, but did you differentiate between public and private institutions?
Right, that would be another thing that we should do, because we have not. So we've treated all universities the same, no matter what they're doing. So we have all the data on their expenditures. So the big difference between public and private is the private have big endowments, the publics tend to not. And so even though they both tend to spend the same amount of money, in the publics, their lack of endowment is made up by having state funds. But in the instrument that we're using to try to capture the exogeneity of the spending, we're looking at endowment shocks. So you're going to tend to get more of these shocks, bigger shocks happening in private sector counties. So we should probably look at that as well. I mean, and what could also happen is that you get a positive endowment shock because the stock market's doing well. It helps the private university endowment, but it also might, the state's flush with money, so it starts kicking in more funds to the public sector. So that's kind of all being that's all being just sort of averaged out in our analysis. We're not distinguishing between those two things. But it could very well be that public and private do different kinds of activities which we might want to capture.
This is totally, I mean, it's not what you did, but I'm just curious your thoughts on it. So it strikes me that a lot of this should be sector specific, that you'll have, and I guess part of this is my Davis background, right? So there are some industries that have developed in Davis over time that are sort of specific to agriculture, for example, or specific to different sorts of applied kinds of things going on the Davis campus. So I'm curious what the implications would be for thinking about it in terms of sector specific, and whether you could do that, and whether there'd be some benefit to doing that. Because it strikes me that then you get into a situation where it's not only, then the endogeneity really becomes vicious, right? Because you have an industry developing around the university, but then the university probably is going to develop around the industry as well, because there's more opportunities, so you get the symbiotic sort of thing going on.
Right, yeah, you're exactly right about the challenge of untangling the endogeneity. What we thought about doing is that you can dig deeper in the IPEDS data, and you can get a sense of what universities are specializing in, whether it's agriculture or engineering or arts and sciences or social sciences, humanities. So we're probably going to start collecting those data. You can get data on grants and where the grants are going, where, let's say, NSF grants, NIH grants are going, to kind of get an idea of what universities are focusing on. And then you might be able to get some traction on that question. Is it benefiting, if the university is really strong in veterinary science, is that leading to firms growing in that particular sector that's going to benefit from researchers in that area? So yeah, we've thought about that. That's down the
sure.
road. Yeah, that's a good question to get at as well.
Any questions? Thanks very much, Sean.
Thank you.